He's back. See, I told you he was safe and sound. I
Huh.
told you everything was okay, thankfully. We're glad you're safe and sound, given the nature of the storms that happened down in the Dallas area. What's up, Chris? Good to see you.
What's up, man? Yeah, it was pretty crazy here. We had like 80-mile-an-hour winds come through here. I don't know if anything actually touched down or not, but like just in my neighborhood, the house that's right behind us, their chimney, all the siding and everything got blown off, completely off. Several trees, like doesn't matter how thick the trunks were, snapped. One of them looked like a banana peel.
Hmm.
It was pretty crazy. Unfortunately, the most amount of damage we had was a few boards on the fence, and then
Good.
a whole bunch of like nails that needed to be nailed back in or anything like that. But yeah, very fortunate. But there are still several, including my mom, without power. So it's not, we're not out of the woodwork yet.
Well, hey, we're glad to have you back. We're glad you're safe. We're glad your family is safe.
Appreciate it.
And that's obviously the most important thing. Today is May 29th, 2024. Here on the Southside Beat, he, of course, is Chris Halicke. I am Corey Crisan. 4 p.m. Eastern today, but an hour late. We'll probably roll again an hour late on Thursday as well, just because that's the schedule of events over on the South Side. Given the OTA practices ending at 2:00, locker room ending around 2:30, and literally me trying to get in front of a microphone that isn't in a sweltering sauna that is known as the indoor practice facility.
You mean they don't run the AC?
Not this time of year, I'll tell you that. Oh man, and they were outside today despite some rain showers, but they were outside today, a little bit cooler outside today, so it was a lot more bearable. So practice today, obviously OTA number 5 out of 10. We're halfway through OTAs as we know it.
Yeah.
And Chris, your chalk talk I wanted to get into from the other day.
Rub some people the wrong way.
Did it now? It kind of talking about what the ceiling of the Steelers offense, so to speak, can be.
Yeah.
Now, I am more cautious than most on the Steelers offense. I know what Najee Harris is. I know what Jaylen Warren is. I know what the offensive line is. I just don't know what the passing game is going to look like under Arthur Smith with the new quarterback. New quarterback in a new system on a new team. There's a lot of new variables that are here. No more Deontay Johnson, obviously. So that's my general feel of the offense. But obviously, you laid your thoughts out in your chalk talk from this week, and like you said, you had a lot of fans of what you had to say about the Steelers 2024 offense.
It was mainly the quarterback situation. And listen, I get it. I get the concern. It's not like Russell Wilson is the guy who was in his prime in Seattle. And it's not like Justin Fields has been this guy that's been, tearing the league up and that's, passed for this, incredibly high passer rating. It's not like the guy hasn't committed, I think, like was it 41 turnovers total in his career so far. I mean, it's a lot, and I'm not discrediting any concern when it comes to that. And I get that whenever I write things like that they tend to come out a little bit more optimistic. That doesn't necessarily mean that there's no reason to be concerned. There's 100% reason to be concerned. There's one, and I outlined it perfectly when it came to Russell Wilson, because a good part of his game meshes with what Arthur Smith wants to do on offense. Play action's a big one. Russell Wilson is really good in play action, throwing the deep ball. Russell Wilson has always and still does throw a good deep ball. The big concern for me, since Russell Wilson typically or is expected to be the starting quarterback right now, is he doesn't throw to the middle of the field. Arthur Smith wants to attack the middle of the field. And so that's where the thing where it's like, okay, how is this going to work? Are they going to design certain plays where they can get Russell out of the pocket so that he can better navigate the middle of the field? I don't know how that's going to work. The one thing that Russell Wilson has really done over the course of his career that's made him a borderline Hall of Famer is his ability to extend plays and to be Superman quite a bit, whether that's making plays with his legs or making throws on the run. And he can still do those things every now and then. It's not like he's completely lost the ability to do that, but it is going to be important for him to play, or for whoever the quarterback is, whether it's Russell or Fields, that they have to be able to play within the structure of the offense as well. And that is, to me, the biggest concern, because when you look at both of these quarterbacks and throwing to the middle of the field, Russell Wilson doesn't like doing it. His numbers are actually not that bad. If you pull them up, like you can pull them up on PFF. You can look at his numbers when he throws in between the numbers. They're actually not that bad. He just did it only 78 times last year. That's not a lot at all. It's one of the fewest amount in the league. Justin Fields, on the other hand, throws to the middle of the field a little bit more often, but when he throws in that middle, that intermediate range, that like 10 to 20 yards, the numbers are absolutely terrible. His pass rating is like 55 or something like that. The numbers just aren't good. So if you're talking about concern, that's where my biggest concern is. Other than that, when it comes to the passing game, the play action, the deep ball, that kind of stuff to me is going to work because, number one, it's what Arthur Smith already does well, and it's something that both of those quarterbacks do well.
I see where you're coming from, and I see where it could be successful. But at least at the early goings of the season, right? I mean, you measure everything out over the course of 17 games, and you kind of take those 17 games and you almost divide them into quarters. You know, at least I do. I go about 4 game blocks. I go month to month. I think the NFL goes week to week, and sometimes you string good weeks together, like we saw the Steelers do at the tail end of the season, and sometimes you strain poor weeks together, like we saw with the Patriots, the Cardinals, and the Colts losses. 3 back-to-back, which
they were bad.
Which they should have won.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, the NFL is week to week in that regard. And I don't know early on what this offense is going to look like in its, I guess you could call it primitive days, in its early days. When I'm talking about, yes, they're coming together in OTAs now, but I'm talking about once they're in the second part of training camp, they're in the preseason, and then once it's go time for week 1. I don't know what this offense is going to look like. We can obviously project based on Arthur Smith's history, blend it with Russell Wilson's history, blend it with Van Jefferson and George Pickens, and blend it with everything here. But at the same time, I'm looking at an aging quarterback who, I'm not saying he lost his fastball, but it's not what it used to be. Let's just call a spade a spade.
I've got some clips that I saw from last year that it's not like the dude can't throw the football anymore.
I don't think it's that, but I don't think his arm's dead, but I don't think it's
not dead.
It's not like in his prime either. Like it's somewhere in that middle.
He had some throws. I remember one specifically. I'm trying to remember who the opponent was, but he hit Cortland Sutton on a slant over the middle, ironically enough. I mean, just did the right thing of reading the mic, looking him off, and then Sutton ran the right behind him. I mean, he threw a dart right in there. I mean, he can still rear it back, and there was another one that I remember. It was another touchdown pass that he had last year, in which he was rolling out and he made that throw on the run. And for somebody like him, that kind of throw, it just comes naturally to him because remember, he was also a really good baseball player too.
Sure.
Infielder, like having that ability to make those type of throws, like being able to do it in multiple sports, it's there. The arm is not dead. That's something that's not a concern of mine. The biggest concern of mine is he just doesn't want to throw to the middle of the field, and the numbers back that up. And that's where I'm like, how is that going to work in this offense? Because then that's making me think like if these guys are giving off the projection of, hey, everything's hunky-dory, everything's going to be fine, we all love each other, then either Russell Wilson is going to start throwing to the middle of the field more often, which I'm not betting on that, or Arthur Smith is really, really doing some things differently than what we've seen him do in Tennessee and Atlanta, which not saying he can't, and we've seen offensive minds in recent years change the way they're doing things to better stay ahead in the cat and mouse game, but that's why I'm really curious to see how things are going to start playing out whenever they're installing the offense in training camp, what they look like in preseason. So,
and keep in mind, there's a running back in a contract year now. So there's going to be some, I can't say drama, but there's going to be some buzz at least around that. There's going to be buzz around Najee Harris all year. Everything he does is going to be looked at with a microscope. Maybe unfairly, probably unfairly.
But it's the same thing for Jaylen Warren, too. He's going into a contract year.
That's right.
Now, he's going to be a restricted free agent, not unrestricted. So the Steelers still have some rights there. But still, these are two guys heading into the last year of their contract. The Steelers have to make a decision on either one or both of them. And now, and Alvin asked the question here, do you think they'll extend Najee before the season? I don't know if they actually get it done, but there will be an effort made. I was told by a team source that there is real potential for there to be an extension done before the season starts, and that they will try to do that this summer. So I don't know if that means it ends up happening, that it ends up getting signed, but there will be an effort there, at least on the Steelers' end of it.
If all of this or any of this serves as indication, it's that Harris wants to be a Steeler.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's very evident. And look at OTAs as an example. I'm not one to make big headlines or big deal out of, oh, so and so didn't show up to a voluntary thing, because I mean, if you're told you don't have to go to this, you don't have to go.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a rule that you don't have to go, you shouldn't be bastardized for following that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it's mandatory and you don't show up, that's different. But voluntary OTAs, like, okay, Cam Hayward's not there. Is it something? Yes. Is it nothing? Not really, but also like it kind of is nothing. You know, he's looking for the new contract. He's aging in that retrospect. He's getting up there in years. He's been in the league a decade and a half. Like, he doesn't need to be in voluntary OTAs. He just doesn't. And Najee Harris, for all that he's going through with his contract
mm-hmm.
and all of that buzz, and you would think that Najee Harris is a commodity across the league, given 3,000-yard seasons, some of the runs that he puts forward, the way that he runs. He's a valuable running back in this league. You would think that he realizes what ball is in his court, and I'm sure he does. But at the same time, he's still at OTAs. He's here. He's been on the field through every OTA practice. Now, he had an excused absence Tuesday of last week, which was the first day of OTAs, and Mike Tomlin made that clear. And then the Wednesday of OTAs, he came out onto the field. Or at least he showed up late Tuesday. But point is, he was there. He's been involved in every single thing that has gone on the South Side this week, in his helmet, in the practice jersey, with the cleats on, you know, standing in line with Jaylen Warren and Edwards and all the other running backs. He's here doing everything, and he doesn't have to be. So if that doesn't show the desire that he has to want to be here, and given the surprise factor of all of this with regards to the fifth-year option, I think everybody was surprised the Steelers didn't pick that option up. So given the surprise factor of all that too, the fact that he's still putting on the cleats every day for voluntary stuff, I think that says a lot about him.
Yeah, I don't have any concern when it comes to Najee this upcoming season. There are a lot of people that do. I don't know why. But you know, of all the concern that there is around the passing game, we all have to remember that this offense, just like it was last year, is going to go as far as the running game takes them. If this team can't run the football, then they're going to be asking either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields to, you know, light it up through the air, and that's just not a good recipe. Both of those quarterbacks will be at their best whenever this team is able to run the football. When this team is able to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish by being able to run the football and run it effectively. And, you know, given the fact that they have Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, which in my professional opinion is one of the best running back duos in the league, and the numbers back that up, that, man, they can get it done on the ground. And so then it's, you know, how do Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, whoever the quarterback is, best work off of that? And again, play action, being able to throw the deep ball are two really good things that they do that mesh with that.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's where I become hesitant with the offense, is the can they, will they, are they quotient of the whole deal. I understand Russell Wilson's pedigree. I understand that George Pickens' talent. I understand how good Pat Freiermuth is. I understand what Justin Fields can be, potentially. I understand all of that. But at the same time, and I understand that Arthur Smith has been successful, very successful, as an offensive coordinator, but he's a few years removed from that now. He doesn't have that like consistency that he's had in Atlanta, like he had in Atlanta, and like he had for a little bit of time in Tennessee. And now, like I said earlier, he has a new quarterback going into a new system, new team. A lot of it's new. And that newness is always a Pandora's box of sorts. You never really know what's going to be inside. And look, I see both sides of the equation. I see signs where the offense can be average to below average, and I see instances where the offense can be well above average. And I'm not going to sit here and say, well, I think it's doomed from the start, because I don't think that's what it is. And if this offense was able to do enough and get this team in the postseason with a really bad offensive coordinator and really bad quarterback play all at the same time, if the quarterback play is decent, and if the offensive coordinator, the play calling's decent, okay, they added to the defense. The defense is obviously going to be good. So, yeah, maybe they can be carried in that fashion. But at the same time, I just don't want it to be so below average or so below the needle that I don't think it could possibly be a step backwards, like from the Kenny Pickett last year.
Now,
but I don't know how big of a step forward it could possibly be.
And so just to put this, Emmanuel, I don't know if you tuned in late or whatever, but I very, very clearly stated that the biggest concern about Russell Wilson is not throwing to the middle of the field. I will shout it from the mountaintops, the rooftops, the heaven tops, whatever tops you want me to shout it from, I'll shout it again. That's the biggest concern when it comes to Russell Wilson, and the fact that Arthur Smith wants to do that. Again, how does that mesh? Listen, okay. Hold on a second.
No, give your point.
No, so here's the thing when it comes to the quarterback situation. There's some people that there are people who want to, for whatever reason, still defend Kenny Pickett, and then there are some people still holding on to what could have happened with Mason Rudolph. And I understand those things. And Mason Rudolph, in the 3 games that he played, 4 if you include the playoffs, made this offense look like an actual legitimate NFL offense for a little while, for those 4 games. And maybe Mason Rudolph has finally figured it out. Maybe through the trials that he went through, that he figured it out, that he understands what it takes to play at the NFL level, that he has figured out the pocket presence, because he sure as heck showed it whenever he was playing. But obviously, for whatever reason, and I'm not sitting here trying to defend whatever it is. I'm not sitting here trying to defend the Steelers, defend Mason Rudolph, whoever it is. For whatever reason, the Steelers decided to go in a different direction. That 4 games of Mason Rudolph was not enough for them to just be like, you know what? You're our guy. You're our guy no matter what. We don't need to go get somebody else from the outside. We're going to make you our quarterback. Because maybe, just maybe, and again, this is complete speculation on my part, because I'm just trying to figure out the Steelers' logic behind the decision, is maybe if they keep Mason Rudolph, that's not enough to really threaten Kenny. Even though Kenny was essentially benched last year in favor of Mason, maybe it's not enough to properly motivate Kenny. Maybe they felt like they needed to get a guy from the outside who has some skins on the wall. Maybe that's what they needed to do in order to light a fire under Kenny. And that's the reason why they wanted to go after a guy whenever he became available, like Russell Wilson. Because you want to talk about a guy who has skins on the wall, there you go. Super Bowl win, borderline Hall of Fame career. May not actually make it, but will get consideration for it. Maybe that's why, because they really, really wanted to light a fire under Kenny. And Kenny, in turn, requested a trade. He didn't want to deal with that. He didn't want to compete for that. He didn't want to compete with Russell Wilson because he was feeling like he was already going to be getting the short end of the stick, that he wasn't going to get a fair shot at it. I mean, whatever the reason is, to me, that's like, man, like I don't want that guy in the room if he doesn't feel like he can win a competition against a 35-year-old quarterback.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's the reason why all of that went down. But for anybody who's holding on to this, well, the Steelers should have kept Kenny, or they should have just re-signed Mason. You can do the shoulda, woulda, coulda game. I mean, you could do that once you cross that line, there's no stopping because you could continue to do that about a number of different things. The fact of the matter is that here they are with these quarterbacks. How do they figure it out? How do they figure this out with Russell Wilson? How do they figure this out with Justin Fields? Those are the questions that are worth asking. Those are the questions that are worth trying to find answers to. So OTA is not really the place to find those answers because, again, we're at the infancy stage of the season right now because even training camp's a little bit too early to figure that out. But at least you start to see the actual plan beginning to be put in place in training camp and then in preseason. So those are the questions worth answering. And so whenever I get somebody coming at me saying things like, oh man, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields, those two suck. They don't, we can sit here and try to talk about the concerns all we want, but I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the best way that they can work in this offense?
Yeah. And again, there's a lot of, I don't know right now. And I think that's okay. That's an okay spot to be. And every team goes through that at some point. They're in an I don't know phase right now. And they really have been since Ben Roethlisberger retired. I think it's funny that I dropped a negative comment about the Steelers. And then this comment from Johnny came in and says, I used to like to watch you all show, but it's starting to get on my damn nerves. You love you having a clue. Well, I love me having grammar. So let's figure that last sentence out there, Johnny. I respect you. And what I see in that sentence is love you. I love you too, Johnny. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you're having a great day. Look, when I think of what the Steelers offense can be, that's just what I see. I see some I don't know in there. I see some maybe. I see some will it. I see some if in there. I don't see definites. I don't see concrete things. I see concrete evidence of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren being really good at running the football. Yeah. I see concrete evidence of the offensive line being good at blocking, at run blocking. I see that, but I need it's anytime you bring in some new blood in the offense, whether it's especially a quarterback, you don't know. And I think it's fair to sit here and speculate.
Completely cut out. Corey's mic completely cut out. Either that or I can't hear him.
Oh, no.
There you go.
That's my karma of clapping back at a commenter. I think there's that component of that I don't know, and I think that's fair to have early on, is what I was saying.
Mike and Texas said, unmute Corey, man. I didn't mute him at all. He had something happen.
No, so what I did was I pulled this cord out. I had my elbow and I yanked it out. Again, that's what happens. Sometimes you get fired up. I could get more fired up if you really want me to. Ask me.
No, we're good.
Tell me to. Cat chewing cords. No cat here. No cat here today.
No. So yeah, listen, when it comes to this offense, again, I really want to stress, and I understand the concern over the quarterback position. I get it because, listen, the quarterback is the most important position in the sport, maybe in all of sports.
No, in all of sports.
And we've gone through them. I've said it a million times. I'll say it again. 75% of the Super Bowl winners have had a quarterback that's either in the Hall of Fame already or will be surefire will be in the Hall of Fame. No ifs, ands, but we're talking about the Ben Roethlisbergers, the Aaron Rodgers, the Drew Breeses, those type of guys who have won Super Bowls that aren't there yet. 75%. It's no wonder why there's so much concern over the quarterback position. I get it. But where the Steelers are right now, they need the quarterback play to be better. They don't necessarily need an elite guy to come in. They don't need a Joe Burrow to come in. Would it be beneficial if they did? Yes, because then it becomes no longer are we talking about maybe the Steelers are good enough to make it in the playoffs in the AFC, which, by the way, even making the playoffs in the AFC is an accomplishment because there will be one or two teams once again who fail to make the playoffs who probably deserve it, right? Who are probably good enough to actually hold their weight a bit in the playoffs. But that's just where the AFC is right now. The AFC is loaded. And so, and obviously if the Steelers had one of those guys, if they had a Josh Allen or a Joe Burrow or a I'm not even going to say Patrick Mahomes because anybody would win with him. But I'm just saying if they had one of those elite guys, we're not talking about if the Steelers are good enough to make the playoffs. We're talking about them being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. It almost doesn't matter what the rest of the roster looks like because, shoot, as long as they had Ben for 18 years, the Steelers were essentially a Super Bowl contender. To a certain extent. Obviously, when the defense was having to be rebuilt, there were obvious, there were seasons in which they're like, yeah, they're probably not going to win the Super Bowl. But if there's any chance that they have, it's because they have the ace up the sleeve, which is always having a franchise quarterback. But if the Steelers don't have one, if the team doesn't have one of those guys, what is the best way to try to win? It's with elite defense and it's with a great running game. The Steelers have the pieces in place to have a good running game, and they have enough pieces in place on defense, and they've made other moves on the defensive side of the ball to make the defense better.
Yeah.
So, and Mark, I'm actually counting really quick. He says that Super Bowl percentage is probably higher with Mahomes. I'm actually counting Mahomes in that whenever I say 75%. Because he's already won 3 Super Bowls. He's already accomplished enough where if he retired today, he's going to make the Hall of Fame already.
Here's the reality of the position. Okay. In 4 of the last 7 Super Bowls, the winning quarterback has thrown 3 touchdown passes in the game.
Mm-hmm.
In the last 4 out of 7 Super Bowls, in 2 out of those 7, to go along with that, they've thrown 2 touchdown passes. The other one was when Tom Brady threw 0 touchdowns in Super Bowl 53. I believe that was against the Rams. Julian Edelman was the MVP there. Yeah. But my point is, that's the position. And I'm not going to make, the Trent Dilfers and the Brad Johnsons and the Joe Flaccos. That's the exception. We're not going to make the exception the rule.
No, but
we're not going to make the exception the trend.
What did all of those teams have in common, though?
Great defenses, absolutely.
I mean, all-time great defenses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, we're talking about the 2000 Ravens, the 2002 Buccaneers. I mean, even Russell Wilson, who will get Hall of Fame consideration himself, that 13 Seahawks defense was, Legion of Boom is one of the best defenses of all time.
Yeah.
And then when Joe Flacco wins, I don't know if that Ravens defense that year was one of the all-time great defenses, but it was a really, really, really good defense. And so it's again, when we're talking about quarterbacks that aren't they're either in that hall of pretty good or how in the heck did they even win a Super Bowl? It's because most likely of the defense.
And by the way, in the last 5 Super Bowls, every quarterback has thrown at least 2 touchdown passes and won the game. So, remember when we sat here thinking, well, if Kenny can get to 2 touchdown passes a game, no, that's the level at minimum you probably have to be at, is to put that up on average or put that up on a low end, because that's the demand of the position now.
And see, here's the thing. Okay, with Russell Wilson alone, and I'm not the biggest. I think the dude's a little out there. I'm not. I haven't even met the guy yet. I'm not the biggest Russell Wilson guy, right? I'm just not. Do I think that he deserves consideration for what he did in Seattle? Of course. Do I think he deserves to have Hall of Fame consideration? Yes, I think he's absolutely should be in the conversation for it. I don't know if he actually deserves to be in or not, but either way, last year in a situation in which obviously it wasn't working, Denver was wanting to get out from that. He still had 26 touchdown passes to 8 picks. That's a pretty good ratio. And the 26 touchdowns, which, if you want to talk about the level of quarterback play the Steelers have had, 26 touchdowns is one more than what the Steelers quarterbacks have produced over the past 2 seasons. 2. That is terrible quarterback play. Now, can we chalk some of that up to Matt Canada's offense being terrible? Yes, we can. But for those who want to do that as a way to defend the quarterback play, you better be willing to do the same thing for Najee Harris, maybe not quite being the running back you expected him to be in the first round, or for Deontay Johnson not catching a touchdown pass in all of 2022. It can't just be, it's either the players or it's the offensive coordinator, or it can be, as it is, probably a little bit of both.
Sure. Amos brings up a good point. I think we'll wrap up with this. He says offensive ceiling is high with Fields, low with Russ. This year, I don't know if that's true. this year, I think the offensive ceiling might be relatively the same with either quarterback. That's how I feel as it sits right now at the end of May. I don't know what the ceiling is like. I don't know if the ceiling could be better with either in there. Like, I don't know if they're comparatively different quarterbacks like that.
The one thing that both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields have that Kenny does not have. Kenny has the ability to come up big late in games. But Kenny didn't make a lot of plays on his own. You know, Kenny wasn't one of those guys that was going to be Superman every now and then. Just didn't have that in him. He had the ability to be clutch. He had the ability to make the right throws and make good throws when the game was on the line.
Sure.
But that's not necessarily being Superman. Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both have that ability. They have the ability that at any moment they can literally just put the offense on their back and just make a play. And I didn't see that consistently from Kenny. That's something that Russell Wilson has done throughout his entire career. And that's something that even Justin Fields has done occasionally throughout his career.
Sure.
I mean, when we're talking about, and when you have the athleticism that Justin Fields has, 100%, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, the run he had against the Eagles, that was ridiculous. I mean, I like, there was probably only one other quarterback in the league that could have made the play, and it was Lamar Jackson, maybe. But the one thing that you have to be concerned about when it comes to Russell is the lack of throwing over the middle of the field. With Justin Fields, it's also the ability to throw over the middle of the field and then turning the ball over. Mm-hmm. I'm not as worried about turning the ball over when it comes to Russell Wilson, but when it comes to the overall ceiling of the offense, I think it's a little higher this year. Almost doesn't matter who the quarterback is, because those, like, when it comes to Russell, he doesn't turn the ball over like almost at all. Like I said, 8 picks last year. That's a pretty good number.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about also having that ability every now and then to just make a superstar play. We didn't see that from Kenny. With Mason Rudolph, it was he executed the offense within the system.
Yeah.
Very, very well. That's what we need to see more of, and that's where my concern is when it comes to both Russell and Justin, is how well can they play within the structure of the offense? Because to me, that's going to be what takes this ceiling that we're talking about either from here to here or maybe all the way down here, like where it just completely craps out. Because if neither one of them can play within the system, it doesn't matter. They have to be able to make plays within the system.
Yep.
But
that's what the Steelers are relying on. And obviously it's the end of May, it's OTAs, they're halfway through the voluntary portion of this offseason. So we will see exactly how that all develops once we get closer to our time in Latrobe. That does it for today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for joining. I don't know if DK and Ramon will be on tomorrow. I know they're not on today.
No,
but I'm not sure about tomorrow.
Okay. I knew tomorrow was the plan if they're going to.
So that means we might have to can the show tomorrow or figure that out, because by the time things get wrapped up on the south side, it is a little bit impossible as it sits right now. They also are doing team photos. So in the indoor facility, they have like all the backdrops and stuff set up. So it's also impossible to do a show in there. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Stay tuned to the community page. We'll post something on there if and when we find out what's happening. Reminder to subscribe where podcasts are found: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Of course, you can find every episode on DKPittsburghSports.com. Later in the evening, we have that posted up in playback form. And again, you can find the playback right here on YouTube, where you found this live stream on DK Pittsburgh Sports on YouTube. He's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan. Thank you all for joining in. We'll talk to you tomorrow. We hope. Cheers, everybody. Have a great one.